There's a thing that people like me do when we're about to talk about a cause, particularly when we're trying to raise money for it. We say, this is a cause that is very close to my heart. And in this case, I mean it. Many years ago, I got a call from my best friend to say that his youngest daughter had been rushed to hospital. They'd been out all day when his 3-year-old daughter basically just collapsed. She was taken by ambulance to a hospital in London. I left work and drove into town, stopping only to buy a little teddy bear on the way. When I arrived, I found my best friend pacing the corridor. He said she'd basically passed out and they couldn't revive her. I went in to see her, this tiny little girl with wires and tubes coming out of her. I gave her the teddy bear and I spoke to her for a while. The doctors confirmed that she'd suffered a brain bleed and that her little life was literally hanging in the balance. I stayed for a while trying to comfort my mate who was, as you'd expect, inconsolable. On the drive home, I called my wife to give her an update. As I was telling her what I'd seen and what the doctors had said, I broke down. I literally had to pull over. I just sat there and sobbed. Thankfully, that little girl is now in her 20s. That brain bleed has left her prone to seizures. In all likelihood, she'll never be allowed to drive. And all of that was caused by a seemingly innocuous thing: dehydration. With all that in mind, we need to talk about something that usually gets brushed off as a bit of a soft topic. We need to talk about heat health and the reality of staying hydrated. The official heat health alert season in the UK kicks off on the 1st of June and runs right through to the end of September. Now, for many of us, that just sounds like the time of year when the work gets a bit sweatier and the PPE gets a bit itchier. But the reality is that the construction sector is probably the most hydration challenged workforce in Britain. And it's not because anyone is thick or doesn't realise that water is important. It's because the way a site actually functions is almost perfectly designed to make you fail at staying hydrated. Think about the last time you were on a major demolition job or a massive new build. If you're 3 stories up or right at the back of a sprawling site, that water refill point might as well be in the next county. When you're in the middle of a task or you're trying to hit a specific milestone before the end of a shift, the last thing you want to do is down tools, climb down, trek across the site and wait to top up a bottle. You tell yourself you'll grab a drink when the job is done or at the next scheduled break. But while you're pushing through, your body is paying a price you might not even notice until the headache kicks in or your focus starts to slip. Then you have PPE. We wear it because we have to, because we're professionals. But let's be honest, in 25-degree heat, a hard hat, gloves, and heavy-duty high-vis gear turn into a personal sauna. Your core temperature climbs, and the more you sweat, the more your blood thickens, making your heart work twice as hard just to keep you upright. Taking that gear off to have a drink feels like an interruption, a break in the momentum. So we delay, we keep going. And that's where the danger starts to creep in. You want to get the job done, and hydration feels like an inconvenience. Water becomes the thing you'll sort out later. But by the time later arrives, fatigue has already taken hold. There's also a bit of a silent trade-off that we don't talk about enough on site, and that's the issue of toilet access. It sounds basic, but we've all been there. If the site toilets are a nightmare, or if they're situated miles away from where the actual work is happening, some people will consciously drink less water just to avoid the hassle of having to go. It's a survival tactic, but it's a dangerous one. If you're rationing your water intake because you don't want to go to the portable loo, you're essentially sabotaging your own ability to think and move safely. And let's look at the culture for a minute. In this country, sites are fueled by tea, coffee, and increasingly energy drinks. It's part of who we are. A brew is more than just a drink. It's a moment of headspace, a bit of a social reset. Research tells us that about 28% of Brits say they rely on caffeine just to stay productive, and nearly half of people think that tea, coffee, or energy drinks actually count as hydration. But here is the cold, hard truth. When the heat is on and you're grafting, those drinks are not your friends. Caffeine is a diuretic. It basically sends a signal to your kidneys to get rid of water. So if you're already losing fluid through sweat and then you top it up with 3 or 4 strong coffees, you're actually making the dehydration worse. You're flushing out the very stuff your body needs to keep your brain sharp and your muscles moving. Energy drinks are even worse because of the sugar spikes and the inevitable crashes. They might give you a 10-minute buzz, but they leave you more vulnerable to heat exhaustion in the long run. The HSE doesn't put out a guidance for the sake of it. They specifically advise frequent sips of cool water precisely because caffeine doesn't afford the hydration levels required for the physical load that you carry. We have to stop thinking about hydration as a wellness thing and start seeing it as a performance and a safety thing. If your body loses just 2% of its water, your concentration starts to tank. In an industry where a second of distraction can lead to a serious or possibly fatal accident, being dehydrated makes you a liability to yourself and to the rest of your team. And the side effects are more than just a bit of a dry mouth. It starts with a headache that you try to ignore. Then comes the lightheadedness. You might find yourself being unusually irritable with your mates or struggling to focus. From there, it moves to muscle cramps, which are your body's way of screaming that its electrolytes are all gone. If you keep pushing, you hit nausea and dizziness. That's the point where heat exhaustion is knocking on the door. And if you cross that line into heat stroke, you're looking at a genuine medical emergency that could do permanent damage to your internal organs. It's not about being tough enough to handle the sun. It's about biology. You can't tough out a lack of water any more than you can tough out a lack of oxygen. A professional athlete wouldn't dream of starting a game dehydrated. And what we do is every bit as physical. You should be drinking a good amount of water before you even set foot on site. If you start your shift in a deficit, you'll be chasing your tail all day and you'll never truly catch up. On site, we also need to move away from the idea of the big drink. Gulping down a litre of water at lunch doesn't do much for your body because your body can only process so much at once. Most of it will just go straight through you. The trick is little and often. Small, frequent sips every 15 or 20 minutes to keep your hydration levels steady and to keep your brain switched on. And for the managers and the ones running the sites, the responsibility is every bit as big. Don't make the lads trek across site just for a drink of water. Get it to the work zone. If it's easy to reach, people will drink it. In the peak of the summer heat, we should be looking at shorter, more frequent breaks in the shade. It's better for the job to take 10 minutes longer than to have someone collapse or make a catastrophic mistake because their brain is foggy from the heat. And we also need to keep an eye on each other. If you see a mate who's usually sharp starting to fumble, or if they're looking a bit flushed, not making much sense, don't just tell them to get on with it. Get them some water. Get them into the shade for 5 minutes. It's about site culture. We look out for each other when it comes to harnesses and hard hats. We need to do the same when it comes to the heat. As the summers continue to get more intense, staying hydrated has to become a core part of the trade. It's about ensuring that at the end of a long hot shift, everyone walks off that site in the same condition they walked on. So keep the brews for the start and the end of the day if you must. But when the sun is out and the work is hard, make sure the water is the first thing you reach for. It's the only way to stay cool under the kind of pressure you deal with every single day.